Welcome to Compassion Speak. These podcasts explore spiritual and self-care topics, adding wisdom, creative ideas, and strategies to play with, to increase your options and explore how to show up in a way that is new. My name is Sean Allison. I'm a medical intuitive, a chaplain, and a spiritual teacher at Journey Within in Lakewood, Colorado. This is my co-host, Cleo. She is a light worker, a glass artist, and as my student, has offered to take a deep dive into emerging gifts and talents.
Today is May 5th, 2022, and our topic is recognizing and owning your value.
That's a journey.
This is particularly challenging for me. I think it's a family injury that I and my family members have a tendency to not be able to see what we've done. And it's kind of a defensive thing. It's kind of like, it might have been terrible. I don't want to know. And so we blind ourselves purposely to what we do so that we can't tell whether it's good or not.
That's a little game of cat and mouse, huh?
It is. It is.
You know, I think it's also a level of self-protection, too, when you look at it. I mean, if I'm not fully engaged or in a good self-esteem moment, then hearing the impact that I have on someone else can be very fragile.
Yes, I agree. It's
and
interesting.
So I'm going around trying to take care of or placate or even, what's that word when you deflect, the focus being on me.
That's a great point. That's a great perspective there. Yeah, I think that's so true. I think also sometimes when it's something very, very rich that we've never had before, that we're dying for, it can really hurt to get it for the first time. You know, if you have the mother wound and you've never had mother's love and suddenly you have mother's love, there's a lot of tears to being able to accept something that we're desperate for, that we're so needing, and that we've never been allowed to have before. And so I think sometimes
it's almost like
ahead.
Catching a baby chick.
Yeah.
If we add too much heat for too long a time, it's not going to grow properly. Right? And so sometimes love, we have habituated ourselves around it looking and feeling a certain way, even though it may not be authentic or truthful. That is how we associate love to be. So if it's prickly, if it comes with these pulling out of the carpet out from underneath you, I'm about to trust, I'm trusting, and now you're not trustworthy anymore.
Yeah.
You know? Does that feel in sync with what you're painting? Very much so.
Very much so. That's a great observation. That if we have a definition of love or a habituation that love is always icky or love is always, some people have sort of this hearty, backslapping, faintly aggressive sense of love. You know, that love can be like the guys around the campfire whacking each other on the back really hard, saying nasty things about each other and laughing really hard. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's because I have had that for a long time, and the angels always give me a hard time about it. They're always just like, that is not love. Just like, how can you say that? I'm so happy. I'm so positive. I'm so accepting of all these frustrating things, and I'm really making a good time out of it. I'm making something positive out of stuff that really is quite painful to have to live with. And they're like, no, you're not, you know. To hold it in contemptuous humor is not love, is not loving. That loving is truly appreciating even the worst and most frustrating thing for the true gift that it carries. and not having that sort of backslide. It's very funny. It's very funny to see all these ways that we don't recognize, or I haven't recognized until now, that that I'm thwarting my own positivity, thinking this is positivity, thinking this is good. This is me owning and appreciating and being positive, and I'm laughing, and this is okay, and so here I am appreciating. It's like,
and maybe one way of looking at love is that it always moves us beyond where we are at. It always moves beyond what is comfortable. It moves into what is new. I mean, when you think of unconditional love, that is so expansive that it includes every frequency. That love can be an example of hate. That love can be an example of correction or punishment. That love can be an example of nurturing. And love may be another example of boundaries. Love may be an example of a passionate embrace or kindness given to a stranger. That it is so expansive that it includes everything. And I like that because in order for it to function, it has to descend from what is unconditional to function specifically, which is conditional.
Ah, okay.
So that's why I encourage this idea that the more that we can experience and be safe and secure in, the more stable we're also going to feel.
Wow. I love that. So I'm having this vision right now of sort of that Buddhist understanding of life, where life is a pond or an ocean, and on the surface are all these waves and ripples, and that's really us really thinking and us really planning and understanding and trying to figure things out. And it's where all our arguments are, and it's where pretty much most of our conflicts are. And then underneath that, in the deep layers, are really the truth of love, which doesn't have to be logical, doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to solve a problem. It doesn't have to control a situation, because it's so expansive and so open and so generous that when we go into that space, everything looks different.
Yeah.
Our whole
And it really
perspective
gives
changes.
an opportunity for love to be fierce, for love to be soft, for love to be pliable and integrative. And I think that there are times where we experience what limitations we have around love when invalidation is a part of the exchange. It's like if I'm loving in a specific way and giving to you and you cannot receive what I am giving, then you are going to feel invalidated by my expression of love.
Oh, that is brilliant. Yes. Oh my gosh. So true. So true. And that's a perfect example of somebody being in that upper layer, trying to make sense of what's coming in instead of going down into the depths where it's much easier to recognize what's going on. It's much easier to recognize when someone is being loving or accepting. It's so much easier to see the real truth behind things from that deeper layer, from that deeper perspective. And I think it's when we go into that place of seeing through our heart that recognizing and owning our value can be more than an equation, more than something logical, more than something where we're adding together, other people's validation or other people's reflections of what we're doing and how we're doing. It's when we go down to a place of, I feel great, and I know I'm making a difference because I feel it.
No, see, that's beautiful. And I think that is what we're getting to, is that love expression is physiological. It affects us on all levels, in all dimensions. We can be unconditional in the upper dimensions, and then we can be very conditional in the way that we have it function in the lower dimensions. Mm-hmm. So a 3D experience here on this planet Earth is what's going to be functional between the two of us, which is only one portion of what love really is.
Wow.
One of the things I love about this idea, speaking of love, is coming alongside of each other and being able to match each other's energy, not long enough to bring the other person down or bring the other person up, rather be something that we can explore and discover together as we move up in frequency or move down in frequency. Sometimes love is going together to those shadowed places, to those wounds that deserve our attention.
Yeah.
And the more we make it stable and secure in those fragile moments, then the better we can function all the way around. It becomes a firm foundation to build from.
Yeah.
And from that security, we can step into new experiences with a lot more flexibility, a lot more elasticity.
I love that. I think that is so challenging to know how to use it, when to use it, how much, how little, getting someone else to even understand and appreciate what we're doing. Everybody has sort of their own idea of how much they want, how much reflection is needed for them to feel heard, how much silence is needed for them to feel heard. It's almost like, it's just like love, right? Everyone has their own idea of what this is supposed to look like. And it can be hard for them to accept anything else.
And I think that also speaks to the unconditional nature of love. When we're able to be in that moment and fully take in what's going on between us, that is an example of love. Even if it is filled mostly with conflict at the moment. Being able to contain that and turn it from right and wrong into meaningful. Right and wrong, from right and wrong to how I need it to be and how you can be supportive to that.
That's a perfect example of recognizing your value, being able to value somebody else's foibles, as you might say, and in doing so, being able to turn that same power to ourselves and say, yeah, I just went for a bike ride with my son and I kind of exploded halfway through. And, even while we're still on the bike, saying to my son, I love our partnership. I love our partnership. We just learned, I need to be paying more attention to what our partnership needs. And he learned that he couldn't really steer the bike from the back. We ride like a tandem, and he learned that he can steer the bike from the back. He can physically, he's as big as me. He physically can move the whole bike by himself from the back. But he sort of tried to do that without us kind of agreeing that this was how it was going to go at the moment. And so we almost went careening into an irrigation ditch. And I said, this is a really good aspect for us to look at of our partnership. I love our partnership. And other people look at us and they want to be us on this bike. They envy us because we have such a great partnership. But I think it kind of breaks down if we don't pay attention to, that we both want to go the way that we're going.
Yeah. And using grief as an example, grief is all over the place. And it's unpredictable and unavoidable. Here we are.
Right.
And I think that love operates the same way. That when we are able to be in the moment, we are able to adjust to the conditions of each moment better. For there is no other comparison to what happened beforehand and what we are working towards. There's just a recognition that this moment is what we can make use of. And we can structure things so that we can have progress on one end, or maybe forgiveness on the other end, right?
Yeah.
I also think that the here and now is our most potent place of exchange, where you can be fully heard, I can be fully seen, and what we come up with together is so wonderful that we podcast year after year after year on it, week after week after week.
Yeah.
Because we don't really know where it's going, nor do we need to. Love is. So one of the descriptions that I really love is found in 1 Corinthians 13, where it says, love believes all things, it bears all things, it hopes in all things. And perhaps all things is a little too much to process at the moment. Maybe just hope. And what that means in the moment is enough for now.
That is beautiful. I love that. That is wonderful. I'm curious, when we think about the here and now, being present in the moment, staying in our body, slowing down and trying to get out of our reactive self and be in an intentional self, what would you feel like are the most important steps to, let's say you're, coming home from a big presentation. You just gave a big eulogy at a service, and you're driving home afterwards, and you're in the moment, you're breathing, you just had this amazing big success. Recognizing and owning your value in that moment. What does it look like? What does it feel like?
Yeah, going back to that day, I'm thinking to myself, well, I think that went pretty well. I had more material planned for than I had time for, and I was open in the moment and allowed myself to speak from my heart, and my heart carried me through this amazing journey, right? So there's this peace and feeling of connection and being grounded. When I am in that awe and wonder of the moment, there really is not a lot of thought. There's just a peace, a quiet, a contentment. So that would be one example that I went through. Other times, I think that it's more intellectually based. I have a lot of conversations going on in my head, and then I become aware that I need to slow down. And so I start to breathe in and out and physically slow down. And make each decision, each thought more intentional, and allowing more spaces between my words. I find myself doing that now and slowing down my rate of talking and kind of reflecting and seeing what comes next, That is one way that I can reflect on where I am at. Am I okay? Am I safe? Is there an area of concern that I need to focus on? Do I need nurturing? Is there some part of my self-care that I can look at or participate in that can de-escalate any feelings and kind of bring me back to this moment? Because sometimes I'm so busy creating that my energy and my thoughts and my intentions are scattered. Mm-hmm. And so I may not look as deliberate in my behavior because I have a lot of things going on in other dimensions. So right. my attention is divided.
Right.
And by being able to refocus in this moment and maybe wiggle my toes and become aware of my knees, my fingertips, my posture, my breathing. Once again, as you talked about earlier, it brings us back into our bodies, into what we can control, what we can do. Mm-hmm. And I think that can also be one way that I can come back into that moment of appreciation for where I'm at.
So I'm really noticing that it takes bravery to really give ourselves credit sometimes. It takes bravery to look back and accept and give ourselves a pat on the back and to say, I love my ego, that it's okay for it to be here now, and I'm going to feed it and take care of it and be kind to it, because without it, the whole step of owning our value really, I think, so much has to do with both the balance of humility and ego, being able to accept that, yeah, I did this amazing thing. I gave this amazing eulogy. I want to share it with people. It's important. It matters. It made a difference. And I care about that. And I did a great job. And I have this thing that I can share. And then also having the humility to be realistic as well, so that we're not going off on a tangent and getting crazy. But at the same time, we still have to be able to really embrace and celebrate and love and value the things that we did do in a really powerful way, in a brass band kind of way.
I also think that it helps to be able to change our expectations instead of things being the same all the time, something that we can count on. To be okay with it ebbing and flowing, going into a state of structure and having it fall apart, and learning that life is about change and adjustments and transitions. So if I can remain secure and kind to myself during each process, then that failure doesn't feel explosive or imploding. It feels buoyant and exciting and builds off of itself to the next possible way of functioning. It's like it's part of refinement.
So my question to you is, what does owning your value become part of that? Become what is able to buoy you up when there's a failure? Is it functional then, or is it something we're searching for all over again?
Yeah, in my imagination, in my inquiries, my thoughts have played around with this idea of, how is Jesus perfect? It's It's not that he didn't make any mistakes. He was in integrity each step of the way. I can, I cannot. I can, I cannot. I can. And being okay that I cannot do this now. This is not a good day to podcast. This is not a good day to do healing work. Or this is a moment to step into and create, to contribute, to bring to the next level. I think those are defining moments in our ability to have our worth. Because if I can make what I cannot do as valuable as what I can do, then there's not so much resistance.
Oh, that's lovely.
Then we have that chance to shine our light in the shadows and then bring out of those shadows what's ready for its next step.
So what I'm hearing is that ability to value ourselves at our least productive, at our most fallible, the days when we're sick and we can't do anything, valuing ourselves as a creation of God or as a part of, the perfect existence of the universe. And then being able to step into also valuing and recognizing fully our abilities and our gifts that we have to share as well.
A beautiful example. Yeah. I agree.
Many, many times I get hit with that one. I get, I'll be really, really flogging myself trying to meet the expectations that I've set for myself or that someone else has set for me. And many, many times I'll get the message over and over again. I'll get it from a friend. I'll get it from a doctor. I'll get it from the angels, all, 3 days in a row. Cleo, you don't have to do anything. You have value even when you do nothing. And this is something that in general I resist quite a lot. And it's mainly because it's fun doing things. It's exciting. Who wants to sit around valuing just being? Why waste your time? It's not that I don't see that it has a purpose or that it's a good thing. I'm just already 10 gears forward. I'm already, just because the machine can't move doesn't mean that I'm not 10 gears forward and ready to go. And to have to turn everything off and sit there and accept that, the machine is not going to go today. It's hard. It's hard. When that's your joy, it's really hard to accept it.
And I also think it increases the level of disappointment if all of my expectations are banking on this one experience. That having a variety of activities that I can have as a backup plan, it insulates the disappointments, so they're more manageable.
This is very interesting. There's so many times when we're really encouraged. I mean, our society has lots of things that it's pretty dedicated to that really don't actually function that well for a lot of people. And one of them is really that sense of, maybe, I don't know. I love this. I feel like, if you throw everything, all of yourself into this one thing, if you really focus, you can have it, whatever it is. And then when, the truck doesn't start, I'm just like, oh my God, I have thrown everything that I have into this one thing for today. And part of that commitment is having this sense of, I will find a way to make this work. I make miracles. This is my job. This is what I do. I can do it. I'm going to make this happen. And I think probably having the ability to, as you would describe it, transition, right? Probably that would serve me pretty well.
Yeah. Well, and way to be aware of that. Yeah. How many times do we go into the same project, and yet we place value on different parts of that experience? You may see the value of productivity or efficiency. I may value connection and meaning. And so with your productivity, I can feel invalidated while we are, producing.
Wow. That's
So I
interesting.
think that we have to be on the same page as far as what our payoffs are individually. And then when we come together, we lovingly support their achievements by rallying behind it too. So not only do I need to make it productive, I also need to make it meaningful. And there may be other places to draw from that will add to that experience and support areas that I can't do so well. One of the areas that I find that we often overlook is leading with our weaknesses.
Describe
if
this
we
for
go,
me.
Yeah. Oftentimes we're using our strengths way too much, and the overuse of that becomes a detriment. It becomes a weakness because we have an inability to adjust and to take on different roles. If we're leading with taking on different roles and stepping into what we're willing to learn first, then we can use our strengths as weight-bearing pillars to build off of. And
Wow.
The connective tissues like the walls and the trim and the paint and all the things that go into that container, let's say, become something we're all at a we're able to balance out and support in each other. It's a more stable system because everyone's trying, everyone's learning, and everyone's adapting. That's why obstacle courses for teams are so beneficial, because it allows everyone to leverage their strengths and weaknesses and become stronger as a team by being able to fill in and support each other's strengths and weaknesses. And so it really promotes growth, and it promotes stability. And it's also something that is not as common and put into practice.
Wow. I love this idea. Talk more about leading with your weakness. I think that I so see what you're talking about, where someone might be extremely outspoken. And so in an organization, they might be the one voice that always is the first to talk. They're always the one who talks when things are quiet. They're always the one who gets heard, and maybe they're even brilliant and they have fabulous ideas. But because of this pattern, even these are all their strengths that they know are their best. Everyone in the group knows that these are their best strengths, and yet it prevents anybody else from saying anything. It prevents other members of the group from feeling empowered. It actually causes other members to drop their own ideas and drop their own engagement because they're expecting to maybe get steamrollered a bit by this one person. Talk some about leading with your weakness.
Yeah. I think you pointed out a perfect scenario to lead with one's weaknesses, First of all is to assign foreign roles to everybody. That organization to someone who has a messy room.
Okay.
You give leadership to someone who doesn't like to be exposed. Put them out in the front and have them lead. And have them lead from their personality and have everyone adjust to how they can come together and complement that personality. So really it's about identifying in each other places that we can step in and help along. Instead of the larger picture, we're starting to look at smaller components. Let's see. So if I don't like to lead because I have a history of people pointing out my mistakes and going out of their way to embarrass me because of my mistakes, I'm not going to want the exposure.
Mm-hmm.
But if I lead with the understanding that that part of it is no longer allowed, that tendency to make fun of is now they're out of their comfort. They're having to come alongside of and support what is missing with what they're not good at. Now, what comes to mind is that in my weakness, you are strong. And I think in an upper dimension, when we're asking for our heavenly assistance, we're able to draw from resources and ideas and practices that have not surfaced yet. I think this is where brainstorming comes in so well. Without it having such a linear focus, we can bring thoughts and ideas that kind of broaden it, where you can see routes around the obstacles. Another way that you can look at it too is asking the obstacle to have or take on a different role. If the obstacle, instead of saying you can't pass, you have to go around. Mm-hmm. Let's say that the obstacle is a teacher. What is this obstacle trying to show me? If I have to go around the rock because I can't go through the rock, what is that rock showing me about myself and about paying attention as I'm approaching the rock and noticing that opportunities to adjust to and go around may require a stoplight, let's say. Mm-hmm. I'm just kind of thinking outside of the box here because leading with our weaknesses also brings out vulnerabilities. Mm-hmm. And within those vulnerabilities are other strengths that are ready to emerge. So that was the end of that thought.
Vulnerability is I think this is, in this moment, I'm having this realization that vulnerability is absolutely an integral part of recognizing and owning our value. I was talking to some angels yesterday, and one of them was trying to talk to me about leading a parents group, which I'm trying to set up at this time. And I said, I have to wait. The people who I'm setting this up with have not got back to me yet, and I'm waiting. And they said, you have no confidence in your parenting. And I said, well, I work really hard at it, and I love what I do, But, by no means am I somebody to be an expert teaching a bunch of people how to do this. And another angel was very, very much like just kind of laughing and saying, that's just ridiculous for you to think that you are not someone who could teach people about this. You've learned so much, and you have all that to share with others. And then another angel stepped up and said, do not take this lightly. This is a really huge deal. Cleo has come a really, really long way. She also sees how far she has to go. She also sees how much her family suffers from her illness. This is a huge, huge problem for her. Don't take it lightly, because she doesn't take it lightly. And I felt overwhelmingly empowered. It was bizarre, to have somebody recognize and say, yes, it's okay that you've come a long way. Yes, it's okay that you have so much to learn. Yes, I get it, and I see that it breaks your heart every flaming day that your illness prevents you from being, the mom that's on the playground every day with her kid, and all the other things that my illness prevents me from doing that other moms take for granted that they can do with their kids. Just to have that said to me made me feel so wonderful and so empowered. For the first time, I felt like truly owning the value of what I have learned, and truly owning and looking at my relationship with my son for the first time and saying, oh my God, look at all that we've achieved. And it totally had to do with really accepting the vulnerability of the painful bits.
Yeah, we forget that our strengths once were awkward and clumsy, and that our muscle memory was not established, and patterns and efficiency weren't there, and it took all of those failures and discoveries and missteps to refine it.
Yeah.
And we practiced it, right? One of the beauties that you bring in your conversations with the angels is this leading with your weaknesses. What are we teaching our angels? What are our angels teaching us? Why are they here to work with Sean? What do they learn from working with Sean? You give this personification with angels that really makes them more accessible and user-friendly, right? It's not that we go to Raphael because Raphael works with healing, or we go to Michael because if you need something precise and decisive, that's the angel to work with. That you also give this human quality of the effort that they are investing to try to get you from point A to point B, and the empathy that they're trying to understand to make it meaningful for you to make your next step. And that is such an important part of being able to develop relationships, right? And to know one's meaning and value as you're asking for assistance. And you do that just such a beautiful way of doing that.
Thank you so much. That is so meaningful to me. I love this idea of how our meaning and our value is almost like a volleyball. We toss it around and they toss it back to us and we toss it back to them, and how much our value of each other is part of that investment in ourselves. How when we devalue anything around us, we're really devaluing ourselves. When we because it cannot help but reflect back on us. If we spend time complaining then those complaints show up all over us suddenly, like algae in a fish tank. You know, if we care about the plants in the fish tank, suddenly we don't have any algae either. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's part of the integrity that I have come to fall in love with, is this idea that part of my self-care is recognizing whenever I step into judgment or assigning meaning to something, I am bound by the contract which created it. So I am bound to walk it out. And I've learned that some of the things that I spoke into existence were way too painful in the long run to manage well. So I started changing that and changing my relationship and expectations to it and asking different things from those same events. And so now a wound can be in preparation for something I contribute 10 years from now, because I'm mindfully working through the process to prepare it for the person who needs it moving forward.
Wow. That is so beautiful and so complicated, and I'm dying to ask you more about that. That sounds, I think when we're crafting our contracts, it's so powerful. It's amazing to me. People talk about, manifestation, and they talk about the law of attraction, but it's very uncommon to find people who are willing to talk about the contracts that we create. And I love that. I think that's the best. I love creating contracts and also looking at the contracts that we've created and recognizing how we can change it, how it can be better, how it can be different, letting go of the original pattern in order to make a new pattern. And seeing that as, despite the fact that the whole idea of a contract, the whole attraction, is this idea that of something that's going to be constant, right? Something that you can rely on. We're so excited to have something that we can really lock our claws on and say, no, this is dependable. This I can depend on because there's a contract. But when we let go of that and are willing to create new ones, to stop staring at life in the rearview mirror, essentially, looking at the past and all the contracts and where they came from and why aren't they going the way we want, and instead we look out the front window of the car and we say, that's where I want to go. That's where I want to go. This is the contract I want to make.
And I think it decreases our accidents too.
Yeah.
Right? If I'm not driving, looking into my rearview mirror, I may improve upon my ability not to get into accidents. I think that it's just recognizing that our lives are like an ocean coming in and out. We have high tide, we have low tide, we have storms, we have, stillness in that reflective surface of the water. Mm-hmm. And that it's constantly in motion. And if we can stay in the moment and value our narrative and the way that we describe things and how they work for us and to our advantage now, to explore how it may be affecting other people now, we can make an adjustment now. Between the things that I say, the things I withhold, all of which can be a way of finding the synchronicity of life and really valuing myself because I'm also making life more efficient.
I love that. That is beautiful. This is wonderful. I love this conversation. This is so cool.
Well, thank you again for such a lovely time and discussion.
Yeah.
And thank you for reminding me of all the different things that I can appreciate about Sean. And, I think that on the bottom surface of it all, it's like we're learning how to struggle better. Right?
Yeah.
We're learning how to be present and being able to make adjustments and how to love and how to be available and to know when we're not.
Yeah.
And if I can communicate that to you and help me see and help you by supporting you when I can, then those agreements can be strengthened and build in trust. And a day where you need to spend in bed can be also feel productive and important and meaningful, instead of once again I'm disappointing someone who was expecting something different.
Yeah. Well, thank you for helping me to recognize that this isn't just about production, that it's about connection, and that it's sacred, and that whether or not something is produced is not the point, and that it is about our sacred connection, and I love that. So thank you for that gift.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome. It is a very important theme that runs through Compassion Speak.
It is, yeah.
Thank you for joining us today on Compassion Speak. I want to thank Michael Allison for doing such a wonderful job editing these podcasts. For you, the listener, for your topics and ideas that help us explore wisdom, spiritual gifts, and self-care strategies. Please post your ideas on the Compassion Speak Facebook page and on Instagram. All right. Until next time, put into motion the changes you wish to experience from an intimate universe. God bless, and angels all around you.